एवरीवन, मैं वंदना आप सबका यूपीएससी टाइम में स्वागत करती हूँ। आज की वीडियो में हम एनसीईआरटी हिस्ट्री क्लास 10th का चैप्टर 5 देखने वाले हैं, जो कि है एज ऑफ इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन। इट विल बी द फर्स्ट लेक्चर ऑफ दिस चैप्टर। नाउ लेट्स स्टार्ट द scenario before inventions. Major occupation of the people at that time was rearing animal and agriculture. It was agrarian is rearing. Feudalism and Jamidari system prevailed. Feudal lords exploited the sub and Jamidar exploited the forced labor, or they were called beggars. Exploration of new land routes led to a colonization and imperialism. Colonial master used the resources in the colonized country to earn profit, and it was invested further to earn more profit, and this gave way to industrialization through capitalization. People who invested were called a capitalist, and after that the process was rapid in some places, and in some places it was slow. Okay, and after that, before the industrial revolution, the period of industrialization before the first factories come up in Europe in a term as the proto-industrialization. There was large-scale industrial production for an international market, not based on factory. It was controlled by merchant, and the goods were produced by a vast number of producers making within their family farms and not in the factories. This period was marked by merchant from a town getting product made in the villages. 17th and 18th century, merchants from the town of Europe began moving to the countryside, supplying money to peasants and artisans, persuading them to produce for an international market. Merchants offered advance for producing clothes for them at a time when open fields were disappearing and common were being enclosed. Income from a proto-industrial production supplemented their shrinking income from the cultivation. Why did the merchant turn to the villages? There were a powerful trade and craft guilds in the urban areas. These associations control competition and prices and prevent the entry of new players in the market. Because of them, it was difficult for a new merchant to set business in a town. Guilds association of producers that trained craft people maintained control over production, regulation, competition, and prices, and restricted the entry of new people into the trade. Ruler granted different guild and monopoly right to produce and trade in a specific products. New merchants turned to the countryside with the expansion of world trade and the acquisition of colonies in a different part of the world. The demand of goods began growing out. Merchant could not expand production within town. This was because here urban craft and trade guides were powerful. It was very difficult for a new merchant to set up a business in town, so they turned to the countryside. Artisans at the countryside were willing to the work for the merchants. Open fields and commons were disappearing. Cottagers and the poor peasant had to know look for the alternative source of income. When a merchant offered advance, peasant household eagerly agreed. This income supplemented their shrinking income from the cultivation. Relationship between the town and the countryside. Merchants were based in the town. A merchant clothier in England purchased wool from the wool stapler and carried it to the spinner, and the yarn that was spun was taken in a subsequent stage of the production to weaver, fuller, and then to the dyer. The finishing was done in London before the export merchants sold the cloth in the international market. Reason for large scale of production being carried out in the countryside and not in the factories. Huge demand. The world trade expanded at a very fast rate during the 17th and 18th century. The acquisition of colonies was also responsible for the increase in the demand. The town producer failed to produce the required quantity. Powerful town producer. The town was producer were very powerful. The producer could not expand the production at will. This was because in the town, urban craft and trade guild were powerful. These were association of a producer that trained craft person, maintained control over production, regulated competition and prices, and restrict the entry of new people in the trade. Monopoly right. The ruler granted different guide the monopoly right to produce and trade in a specific produce product. It was therefore difficult for a new merchant to set up a business in a town, so they turned to the countryside. New economic situation in a countryside. Open field were disappearing in a countryside, and the commoner were being enclosed. Cottages and poor peasants who were earlier dependent on a common land become a jobless. So when the merchant come around and offer advance to product, the peasant household eagerly agreed. Okay. Why did the peasant agree to accept advance made by the merchant to produce a good? Disappearing open field system. In the countryside, the open field system was a prevailing that is and was a free and anyone could use it for a production. But as the population increased, the open field system started disappearing. The rich landlord start enclosing the open field. Cottages and poor peasant they had earlier dependent on a common land for their survival. Gathering the firewood, barrier, vegetable, hay and straw. Now they had to look for the alternative source of income. Many had teeny plots of land which could not provide work for all members to the households. Small field, as a most of land was acquired by the rich landlord, the poor had teeny plots of land which could not provide work for all the member of the household. So when merchant come around and offered advance to produce growth for them, peasant household eagerly agreed. Full utilization of family labor resources by the working of the merchant, the poor peasant and the artisan could continue to remain in a countryside and cultivate their small plots. Income from the proto-industrial production supplemented their shrinking income from the cultivation. It also allowed them a fuller use of their family labor resources. The coming up of a factory, 1730s, the earliest factory in England came up. First symbol of the new era was the cotton invention in 18th century. Increase the efficiency of each step of production, carding, twisting, spinning, and rolling. The output per worker also rose. Richard Arkwright invented the cotton mill. Mill production of cotton started, which allow a more careful supervision over the production process. Cotton became the leading sector in the first phase of the industrialization. The first symbol of new era was the cotton. Its production boomed in a late 19th century, which was a link to a number of changes within the process of the production. A series of inventions in the 18th century increased the efficiency of each step of production process. Richard Arkwright created the cotton mill, the costly new um, machine could to purchase, set up and maintain in a mill. When all the process were brought together under one roof, one management, it allowed a more careful supervision over the production process, a watch over a quality and the regulation of the labor. It was called a factory. In the early 19th century, factories increasingly become an intimate part of the England landscape. The place of industrial changes, cotton was the leading sector up to the 1840s. After that, the iron and steel industry led the way. The expansion of the railway in England, its colonies rapidly increased the demand for the iron and steel. The new technologically advanced industrial sector could not easily displace the traditional industries. Textile was still produced within domestic unit and not in the factories. The high cost of machine and the uncertainty of their performance made technological changes slow. Merchant and industrialists were cautioned about accepting and using the new technology. 1781 James Watt improved the steam engine produced by the new common and the patented patent the new engine, hand labor and the steam power. Industrialists initially were not much interested in the mechanization because industrialist has no problem of labor shortage or a high wage cost. They did not want to introduce machine that got rid of a human labor and require large capital investment. In industries where her production fluctuated with the season, industrialists usually preferred hand labor employing worker for the season. Machines were oriented to produce uniform standardized goods for the mass market, but the demand in the market was often for the goods with intricate design and a specific shape. These require human skill, not mechanical technology. Handmade products come to the symbolize refinement and carefully designated machine-made goods were for export to the colonies. Importance of hand labor. Introduction of machine required large-scale capital investment. Hence, cheap labor was preferred over the use of machine. Manual labor was also preferred in industrial industries where production fluctuated with the season. Goods with intricate design and specific shape were in a great demand in the European market. This was possible only with a hand labor and not machine output. The aristocrats and bourgeois in the Victorian Britain preferred the refined and carefully handmade products. Machine-made goods were the colony's life of the workers. Now, large scale migration to town and the cities from the countryside in the search of job. Job itself was difficult to get. People had to have recommendation. Many job seekers had to wait weeks spending nights under bridges or in night shelters. Some stayed in a night refuges that were set up by the private individual. Others went to the casual wards maintained by the law authority. Workers become jobless after the busy season of the work get over. Seasonally of work in a many industries meant prolonged period without work after the busy season was over. The poor were on the stress street again. Some returned to the countryside when the demand for labor in the rural areas opened up. They either returned to the countryside or looked for odd jobs, which till the mid 19th century were difficult to find. The supply of workers were high and the opportunity of the job were less. This led to a low wages. The period was also marked by the depression after the First World War. At the best time in the mid 19th century, about 10% of the urban population were extremely poor, which went up of anything between the 35 and 75% of the different reasons. The fear of unemployment made workers hostile to the introduction of new technology. When the spinning jenny was introduced in the woolen industry, women who survived on a hand spinning began attacking the new machine. After 1840, building and construction activity intensified. Storage facilities were needed. Roads for transporting the railway network, grew trading by ship or new job opportunity. With this slide, I stop this lecture. This chapter of the lecture is chapter so that here in the next video we will continue this chapter. If you like this video, then put the like button, press the like button, and if you are new in this channel, then hit the subscribe button so that upcoming videos come to you on a time. And one more thing, if you have a query related to subject or chapter, you can ask in the comment box. Thanks for watching the video. Stay tuned with the channel.